and welcome. Thanks so much for joining us. This is Tips for the Transition, the Career Roadmap podcast, and I'm Maria Tomás-Keegan. And my vision for this show is to create resources that help women navigate career and life challenges more easily and know that they are not alone. So each weekly conversation we have here inspires women to address tough questions and become more confident, resilient, and brave in their careers and indeed in their lives. So if something strikes a chord as you're listening or watching today, and you want more information, check the show notes below or the snow notes, whichever, for various ways to connect with my guest and me. As leaders, women bring many assets to the table, including our energy, which comes in all kinds of flavors, positive, negative, and everything in between. And how we invest our energy can change how we view the world, how we approach challenges, and how we engage with others. So, we're going to hear more about that from my next guest, Desiree Musselman. She is a leadership development coach and a trainer, passionate about helping people in leadership learn how to rewire the default tendencies that are holding them back from success and fulfillment in their lives and in their relationships. When Desiree started navigating leadership herself, she struggled to know what to say and hold herself accountable and others accountable as well. She would worry she was being too hard or not hard enough when making difficult conversations, second guessing everything she did. Who hasn't been there? I know I have. Then she realized that her worry was getting in the way of her leadership and happiness. So now Desiree supports new and mid level leaders by helping them understand how their brains work and how they interact with the world around them, allowing them to decide how they want to show up versus allowing their default tendencies to run the show. So let's bring her on and talk about investing your energy. Here we go. Hello, Desiree.
Hello. Thank you for that wonderful introduction.
And thank you so much for joining us. I love this. I know I loved meeting you and the conversation we have had, and I am looking forward to having it here with everyone else so they can eavesdrop on this important conversation. So I would love for you to kind of pull back the curtain a little bit about your background before we dig into our topic today. Give us the shortened version of your corporate journey to set the context for our conversation today.
Absolutely. It's probably a standard kind of journey in a lot of ways. Um, and I'll talk about my corporate life primarily. I worked in an industry that was very male dominated. And of course, me being who I am, I was like, well, I want to go down that path. And I did. And it was really interesting and it was a big struggle. And there was a lot that I brought to the table, a lot of things I had to learn, like any leader. And it was difficult. The first leadership position that I actually had in corporate, I had 68 people working for me, which is crazy. And I was in my 20s. Most of them were men. Most of them didn't want me in my position. They were very upset that I got it instead of them, because I was new to the industry and I was new to the company. And it was a big road that I had to walk. And it got better once I started understanding that I can't make everybody happy and I can't be everything for everybody, including myself, all the time. And that really led me down a really helpful road that allowed me to focus on my people and focus on the business. And I ended up running 7 multi-million dollar businesses for that company. I would go in and address challenged departments, challenged locations, and change them out, get everybody's morale up, really just do an overhaul on everything. And that led me into training our leadership and our incoming people for the Western region for that company. And I loved it.
That sounds like an enormous responsibility for you to have, especially when nobody wanted you in that position to begin with. So that must have been tough.
It was not the funnest time, no, but I learned a lot from it.
Yeah, I'll bet. Yeah. And there you have it, right? Those kinds of challenges that we face teach us something about ourselves and about how to do it better next time. So the lessons that we learn are, if we choose to learn them, right, are incredible, and they really can pave the way for us as we move forward in our careers. So, what in particular led you to focus on leadership development in your career now?
It actually started back when I had that first leadership job in corporate, because I ended up having an internal coach, and it was the first professional coach that I had had. And she was wonderful. Like, I did not feel I needed coaching at the time. I was just frustrated. I was pretty lost. And it was kind of forced on me, which coaching internally often can be.
Yep.
So you go into it with this mindset that it's not for me, it's for somebody else. There's something wrong with me. I need to be fixed. And once I got past that, it opened up a whole world of how I interacted differently with my people. And it really turned everything around, including those people that didn't feel I should have been in the position. Within 6 months, they were totally supporting me and asking what more they could do to help, and looking at my vision and wanting to follow it, which was a huge step and relief for me because of that. And one of the things that she taught me about, this coach, was energy leadership. And I used it quite a bit with my teams moving forward. So that was introduced to me back in 2008.
Wow.
Yeah. And I've been using it ever since. Even before I was certified as a practitioner, I would use it with my teams because it brought a level of awareness that I couldn't get from anything else with them and for myself, of how I was just interacting with everyone.
Yeah, you just said the magic word, awareness. It starts for all of us. It starts there, being aware of what it is we're doing, how we're feeling, all of that. And once we are aware, then we can choose, right?
Yes.
We can choose to do something about it. I'm fascinated by your first experience with a coach. I often, when I'm talking to prospective clients of mine, I often hear that I don't think I need any help. I think I'm okay. I think I can do it myself. And then then I start to ask the questions that get them to think differently about how they would approach it if they were to do it on their own. And they don't have really a clue of where to start. And having that objective view and to see you, right? I'm sure your coach at that time saw you very differently than you saw yourself. Am I right?
Oh, absolutely.
And having that perspective, that mirror, I think we all need that.
It was hugely helpful. And once she could get me to the point that I relaxed and allowed it to happen, and I saw the benefit,
right?
It was like night and day. And the challenge is that usually when somebody's told to go into coaching in a company, there's so much shame and guilt and frustration that you have to really work through, because here's somebody telling you that you're not good enough. And even if they're not saying you're not good enough,
right,
you're feeling that's what they're saying to you.
right.
And it's
Or
really
that's what they're thinking.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. And we stop ourselves in our tracks when we allow that kind of projection, right?
Mhm.
We are projecting what other people are thinking when they recommend that we get coaching.
Yeah.
Yeah. And often, especially in a corporate environment, it's not true. In
Mm-mm.
fact, what they might have been saying, and probably were in your case, is that you'll benefit from this and be better than you already are,
Yes.
which is nothing like you're not good enough.
Well, and it's interesting. One of the things that I always say to the VPs and the C-suite when I work with them is, I don't want you to send me your people because you think they're broken. I want you to send me everybody. Send me your rock stars
Yeah.
because they can always get better
Yep. Yep.
and they're usually ignored.
Yep.
Send me the people that want to get better because we're going to have so much more of an impact than someone who is scared for their job
Yeah.
going
Yeah.
into coaching, right?
And as a coach, it's so much fun to work with someone who is willing and eager to
Mhm.
get better, to do something different, to explore. That's so
Mhm.
much fun.
It
All
is.
right, so I am intrigued, and it is what we wanted to talk about today, energy leadership. So explain that to us.
So, energy leadership is something that a gentleman named Bruce D. Schneider created in the early 2000s. It's been around for a long time now. And it's one of the top 10 leadership assessments and programs that you can go through in the US. And they use it all over the world. And what it does, it's very different from like a Myers-Briggs or a DISC or any of the personality assessments. Energy leadership actually pinpoints how you perceive yourself in situations, others in situations, and the world around you, which helps you understand how to interact without feeling inauthentic. It lets you play outside of the box, whereas like a personality chart really tells you this is who you are, these are the parameters. You can maybe step outside of that a little bit. This actually gives you full control of how you're interacting with people. And it's based off of emotions and thoughts, which is something that's usually not tangible. It makes it a lot more tangible. So you could just look at it and go, all right, I'm in this space right now. Is this where I want to be? Or do I want to be up here? Or do I want to be over here? How do I want to interact with this person? And where are they at in their own energy? Where are they sitting in their perceptions and their thought process? And it just helps us navigate those situations. And I started using it in 2008 with my teams because, like I said, I was in a male dominated industry. We don't talk about emotions. And it was a construction industry, which is like, you really don't talk about emotions and thoughts and feelings and what's going on for you. That was just taboo. I could make it more tangible, where it was more like a hard skill for them, it was a lot easier to have those conversations. And I taught a lot of my people, hey, let's figure out where you're at before we have this conversation. Or they'd come in all hot into my office and go, I need to talk to you. And I'm like, great. Where do you need me to be before I answer, before I respond? And that actually helped me interact with them and it calmed them down a little bit.
Okay, so I love what you're saying, but give us some examples of how this might work when you're
Sure.
actually what might you be asking them about where they are and then where they need you to be? What are those
So let me give you a
questions?
little brief introduction to what energy leadership is. So it's
Okay.
7 levels is where it's kind of pegged in. And it's a continuum that we go through throughout the entire day, depending on what's coming at us, what's going on, where our thoughts are, where our emotions are. It changes and flexes throughout the day. And each of the levels represents a thought, like a core thought and a core emotion that you can tap into or you may already be tapping into. So let's use, for example, level 1. Level 1 is associated with feeling like you have no influence over the circumstances that are happening. It's very much, I'm not going to take any action. I'm very quiet. I'm going to kind of sit back. I can't do anything. No one's going to listen. There's a lot of like feeling like you're really heavy, right? You get into level 2. Level 2 is a lot more about those frustrated, angry feelings of like, I'm going to win and you're going to lose because that's the only thing that can happen. I really want to make sure that I succeed in this and you're getting in my way. That thought process of somebody is really pushing on me and I have to push back to be heard. Then you get into like a level 3. Level 3 is more about cooperation. I have a goal I'm looking at. I'm going to achieve it and I'm going to see if people fit into the puzzle to help me get there. If they win with me, that's awesome, but I'm really focusing on what my goal is and I'm going to move forward to that. So you really let go of the frustration and the feeling like you have no control at this point, yet you're not really interacting with other people. You're still focused on what you want. Then you get to level 4 and it's kind of the midway point. And I call this more of like the servant leadership area. You're very focused on other people winning. If you win, it's either because you win because the other person wins, or you win or you don't win. You don't really care if you win because it's all about the other person and what they need and how to support them and how to grow them and how to build them up. All of those have their places. None of them are right or wrong. You need to have each one of those. When we get higher up in this energies, like the level 5, 6, and 7, it's more about connection. It's more about creating win-win solutions that work for everybody. It's really where your imagination and your intuition run wild, depending on the situation. So let me give you an example. If I would have somebody walk into my office and they were pretty hot, they were very upset, had a horrible customer, they need to vent it off. After I would teach the energy leadership to my people, I would pull out a chart and go, hey, where do I need to be? You seem to be somewhere on the lower 1, 2, 3 areas at the moment. I want to make sure I support you. If I come in at like a 6 or a 7, which is like kumbayaing, I'm probably not going to support you in the best way. So where do you want me to be? Do you want me to be down in like a 2, frustrated, like I got your back, venting out? Do you need me to be like more in a 4 where I'm more empathetic and I'm not like getting on the bandwagon and building that up? Where do you want me to be? And usually that would give them enough time to take a step back and go, oh yeah, I am kind of in that venting, frustrated. Is that where I want to be? Do I need to do that? Or do I need to just stick to like the facts of the situation and let go of those emotions because it's not supporting me? Or they need that.
You know, I love what you just said. First of all, I want to share with everyone this chart that Desiree is talking about. I downloaded her free gift. You're going to have a chance to do that as well. This is a powerful piece of paper I found. And what she's talking about here are the 7 levels, and starting with lethargy and going up into creation. And the way they're all described, the core thoughts, the core feelings, and the actions or the results. She's just described the results.
Yes.
So I love that. So you're asking, what kind of support do you need from me?
Yes.
How can I support you in the best possible way in this moment?
Absolutely. Well, and how are they supporting themselves?
True. And they're probably not if they're down in that lower area, right?
Absolutely. Well, and
Yeah.
they could be. I mean, we could get into a whole conversation about, toxic positivity. Sometimes we need those lower levels because
Well,
those help us.
we move through them, right? So that
Yes.
may be a situation may trigger us, and we feel victimized or just plain mad about the situation, and we need to work through those emotions. Having someone help us do that might speed the journey a
It
bit,
usually does, yeah.
right? and we get to see another perspective from someone who's not so mired in the minutia of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it also helped me not be triggered. Because a lot of times, if
Tell
I'm in
me
the
about
middle of
that.
something, if I'm in the middle of something, let's say I have like a big report or I'm dealing with an upset customer, if somebody, barges into my office and is like, I'm done, they're just like upset, I'm probably not going to respond in a way that's going to be supportive for them.
Yeah.
So that allows me that space to kind of take a step back too and go, okay, I know this is not where I want to be. This is definitely where they want me to be. How do I show up? What do I do? Where do I want to be supportive to them and me? Because this is going to go really sideways if I pop off and I'm hot with them just as much as they're hot with me. And it happens all the time because we have so much going on as leaders. There's so much coming at us. If we don't take that moment to go, where am I, and check in, we can't have that outcome we're looking for.
Okay, so you're speaking my language, because one of the things that I tell my clients all the time is that there is great power in the pause.
Yes.
So if you just catch yourself in the heat of it and become aware
Mm-hmm.
of where you are, and if this graphic that I showed you a moment ago will help you, use it. I mean, all the tools that we can have in our treasure chest to pull out on a moment's notice are just the tools we get to use.
Absolutely. And I did. I actually framed that chart and put it on my desk in
Yeah.
every office I had so I could take a moment. And I didn't used to be okay with silence. That was something that was hard. So that pause for a lot of people is hard because they feel like they should be doing something. This helped fill that void because I was doing something, and I was doing something that I truly felt was going to be helpful moving forward. It wasn't just a pause to calm down.
Right.
Because I wouldn't allow myself that.
It's a pause to reevaluate.
Yes.
It's a pause to choose.
Yes.
And we have to think about that. We have to be conscious about where we are and what we want instead.
Yes. It's that intentional choice.
All right, so let's talk about that. What do you mean by intentional choice?
Well, before we came on here, we were talking a little bit about unconscious bias and how our brains work. And it's really interesting because a lot of the things that we do unconsciously. And oftentimes when we think about unconscious bias, we think it's a negative, but it's actually something that our brain just naturally does so we can function in the world. And it's really interesting. There's different amounts, but somewhere between 30 million and 60 billion is the amount that they say of information we take in per second, which is a lot. Like either one of those is a lot.
Yeah.
Yet we can only consciously pay attention to like 16 to 40 pieces per second.
Wow. Wait a minute. Run those numbers by us one more time. I was not aware of that, but that's a little scary.
There's a debate on how high it is, but it is definitely in like the 30 to 40 million up to like 60 billion pieces. Because when you think about it,
in a second,
in 1 second,
my.
it's touch, it's taste, it's sound, it's visual, it's changes of the shading, it's wind, it's everything that we take in, and we take that for granted.
Right.
How much information we take in per second.
So, and then the number of how much we can consciously respond to
is between 16, so 1/6, and 40.
Wow.
40.
So we have to choose pretty wisely, don't we?
We have to be very intentional about what we're paying attention to. And the way our brain works is to automatically make assumptions based off of past experience, our memories, our emotions, how we felt about it, other people's thought processes that we've taken as our own,
Yeah.
our cultures, everything makes that up of how we're going to interact with somebody else. And we don't really control it unless we're very aware of how we're showing up. That's when we can get really intentional and live in intentional choice towards how we're behaving, how we're responding. And it does get easier
With practice,
with
absolutely,
practice.
like everything else, right? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. You were talking about unconscious bias. When we are not focused on intentional choice, that unconscious bias can influence how we show up, how we respond to situations.
Yes.
And like you said, it comes with all the history that we come with. Some people would probably say that there's even past lives that come into effect, right? What we need to, if we want to, right? What we want to do, if we choose to live by intentional choice, is become aware of as much of that as we can when
Yes.
we're triggered. We go, oh, let's get curious about that.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Curiosity is a big part of this, isn't it?
It is a big part of it. It is a big part of it. And it's not just curiosity of us reflecting back.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of like asking others, what have you seen? And one of the tools that I give to a lot of leaders is something that's super simple. And they use it for project like understanding and kind of pulling them apart and goal setting. And it's just the start, stop, continue question. What do you want me to start doing? What do you want me to stop doing? And what do you want me to continue doing? And the more we can ask those questions of other people, we can understand how we're affecting them. We can understand how we're showing up, and we can be much more intentional about it. And we can dive in and really understand it more. So it's not about tweaking us as people. It's about understanding how to be the most effective we can when we're interacting with other people and ourselves.
And when we, rather than assume how we should do it,
Yes.
if we ask, then we know.
Yes.
Assuming that, there's the assuming part, assuming the other person is willing to engage with us at this level, to really think about and answer the question, what do you want me to start doing, stop doing, or continue doing?
Mm-hmm. Well, and
So
sometimes
that,
it takes a while.
yeah. And I imagine that when you're leading your team, it took a while for them to get used to you asking questions like that, right?
It's the consistency piece. So what's really interesting is the more that you do this and the more awareness that you bring, the easier it is. So by the time I was hitting like the last branches or the last locations and departments I was taking over, I'd be in and out of them within 4 to 6 months. We would see a change, a pretty drastic change within 2 months because I was consistent with how I was interacting. I walked in, set the field, told them exactly what my expectations are, found out exactly what their expectations of me were, and we just played ball from there. And that helped because I understood where I was at, how I was showing up, how they wanted me to show up, how they were showing up already. And we just built this camaraderie. So it was much easier. That trust was developed. But a lot of it came from me bringing awareness to myself first and then helping them bring awareness to themselves.
That makes a lot of sense. What occurs to me, Desiree, is that this becomes an evolving situation. It is
Mm-hmm.
it is changing all the time,
Yes.
and there are some people who are not comfortable in an ever-changing environment. They want the status quo. This is the way we've always done things, What are you doing? Why are you coming in here and trying to change it? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. All of that stuff. How do you deal with those kinds of people?
That is a big conversation. I will say it starts with really understanding their values, though. What do they care about? Why are they afraid of the change? Because usually they'll open up once you understand why they don't want to change, what it is, where that like fear or that stress or that worry is coming from of the change. Then
Right.
you can kind of work it in and have those deeper conversations of like, well, how are you perceiving this situation? If we change this, what are you thinking? A perfect example would be in one of my locations in Southern California, we were going to test pilot for the first time in years. No one had ever done this in the industry. We were going to test pilot customers being able to check themselves out. And in the construction industry, you have to know all these parts, and they don't have like scan bars on them or anything like that. And everybody's pushback was, we won't need our guys to ring anybody up anymore. We won't need those team members. And I was like, no, this is going to make it so much easier. You're going to be able to spend time on the stuff you actually want to spend time on, which is how I viewed it. But I had to get down to what was the fear.
Yeah.
So they used every excuse that customers won't like it. They won't feel like they're getting the one-on-one interaction they normally get. They're not going to feel like they can talk to us. It was all about the customers, but really they were worried about being obsolete. Yes.
Yeah.
Once we could have that conversation, it opened it up. And it was a totally different ballgame, and they totally took it and ran with it and loved it. So they promoted it. It really had to come down to what do they value? What are they worried about? And how do they want to foresee the future? Getting to that point.
Yeah. 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 And there are some people who I'm sure you ran across that just weren't open to change at all, weren't open to even considering this as a possibility, and you find that they're just not suited for where you're going in this evolving environment. Yeah.
And that's okay. Like, you're going to
Yeah.
run into that stuff, and that's when as leaders we make decisions to help everybody be in the place that they need to be.
Right. Okay, so not everybody's going to get this the first time that you explain it and try to bring them in. What are some of the common missteps that you have seen people make when they try to approach things in this way, this energy leadership way with intentional choice?
Usually second guessing themselves.
Mm.
They have an intuition about where it might be, so they don't necessarily take that step forward. They might not ask the questions of, hey, this is where I see this may be heading. Am I correct? Like, tell me more about it. They don't trust their intuition, and they don't test their theories. So those are two places. And then the last one, the biggest one, is the consistency, not using it consistently. And this is where the default tendencies, and this is where our unconscious bias doesn't get changed, because if we're not consistent about it, we're not actually reprogramming the neuroplasticity in our brains. We're not changing the pathways. We're going to keep doing the same things over and over again. It's really interesting. They've done some studies on people who, like, on the neuroplasticity around stress and reactions. And they've done MRIs and then gave people things to do, like visualizations and talking through it for 10 to 15 minutes a day for 4 to 6 weeks. And the MRIs have completely changed. We don't get stuck in our fight and flight as much. We're able to think more logically and rationally when we are consistent for even that amount of time. And it's not really changing a habit. It's actually changing how your brain functions around whatever you're doing. Those would probably be the most common missteps. is really not being consistent, not trusting yourself, and not verifying.
So those are, and I can think of a lot of things that those three missteps could cure in a lot of other ways as well, right?
Absolutely.
You
Absolutely.
know, if we're consistent about making a change, whatever it is, then the likelihood of us repeating what we've always done and expecting a different result is likely to change. That will shift,
Yes.
and you'll start to get the result that you're looking for. And I think what happens then is when we start seeing that happen, then the snowball starts to
Yes.
gain momentum, and more things start to shift, and they shift more quickly when we realize that an approach like this is something that can literally affect the rest of your life and those around you.
Absolutely.
How do you teach consistency?
In baby steps,
Yeah,
really. It's when we think about making big changes, it seems very overwhelming. So we don't usually do anything. We kind of get stuck and we're like, it's too insurmountable. When I work with clients, there's lots of different little tactics that I teach them, and it depends on their personality and what they are engaged with. There's lots of tools you can use to be consistent. You have to find the right ones for you.
right, right.
I mean, I still like, and as you do it, this is the other thing that I've learned since really doing developmental and learning more and bringing more awareness. The more I use the tools, sometimes the less they work for me, because now my brain's like, oh, I know what you're doing.
Right. I got this. I
So,
figured it out.
yes. So
Yeah.
really trying things out here and there to see what can be most effective in that space. Because
Yeah,
as you
that's the
grow, it's
testing
not going to
part that
work.
you talked about, right?
Yes.
Kind of test things out, and then you learn to listen to your intuition about it
Hmm.
rather than looking at a chart.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is as humans, we like to kind of take our foot off the gas pedal once we feel comfortable,
Yeah.
and we don't challenge it because it's working, right? We've always been taught if it's not broken, don't fix it. The challenge is that if you want to keep growing and you want to keep building your effectiveness,
Yeah.
you have to try new things. You have to test some stuff. You have to get out of that comfort zone. And
Yeah.
it's so uncomfortable.
Mhm. Yeah, it is. I live outside of my comfort zone almost every day. So yeah, I know. I know. I know. Yeah. And that's one of the things that a lot of people resist.
Mhm.
Resist. Yeah. Um, but there are people like us to help them figure out how to do it in small steps that are not overwhelming,
Mhm.
and that are this is a very customized approach that you're talking about. It's the way I approach my clients as well, because everybody's different.
Yeah. There's no one right way to do anything.
No, no.
Mm-mm.
But there is a right way for someone to do something when they know that it feels right
Absolutely.
and
I
trust.
say it's just like leadership. We always talk about there's a right or wrong way to do things, but there's really not. I like to think of it as there's a less effective way and a more effective way.
And it depends on the people, the situation. There's so many factors
Yes.
about
And
that.
one thing that works in one situation may not work in another.
Right,
We have to be
right.
able to adapt in those moments
Which
in
it
our own ways.
which makes it really hard to write a manual.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, and therein lies your challenge. Yeah,
It's a
yeah,
fun challenge to have, though.
yeah, yeah. It's what makes it so exciting to me, and interesting. I'm fascinated by the different people I meet and the different approaches I need to take, because they are different. They're a different client.
Yes.
And that's fascinating to me, and it keeps me challenged all the time. So
Hmm.
I think if leaders who adopt this kind of approach, this energy leadership approach, will be continually fascinated and curious at a lot of good things that you can tap into.
Absolutely.
All right. So, Desiree, we end every episode with a section of tips and key takeaways from my guest. It's why I call the show Tips for the Transition. So, I'd love to know what yours are. Would you share your first one with us?
Absolutely. The first one would be use the chart. It's super helpful. I actually spell out exactly how to use it. So Maria showed a little bit of it, but it's the full, like there's pages of it,
Yeah,
how to
she
actually
does.
use it.
It's brilliant. It's really brilliant. I really have spent some time with it this week since I got it, and I just I love the questions that come to my mind.
Hmm.
So she's done a fabulous job explaining how to use it, and the chart itself is it begs a lot of questions, and when you get curious about those, that's where the magic happens, I think.
Absolutely.
Good job with that. Okay, what's your second tip?
My second tip would be mindful of when you're in judgment.
Hmm.
It's really difficult to stay in curiosity when we're judging things, and we judge things all day long. It's part of that unconscious bias and our natural default tendencies. So the more aware that we are of when we're judging something, even something small, judging ourselves, judging others, judging circumstances of like, it'll be better when we start recognizing that, it's a lot easier to be empathetic to other people, to understand and use that chart to be able to say, oh, you know what, they're kind of in level 1 right now, they're not going to be receptive to this, so let's go into maybe like a level 4 and be supportive and see how I can support them. It's not about me at this point, it's about them. How do I get them out of that? This The judgment piece is a big piece.
Yeah, um, you're so right. We do judge things all the time, unconsciously, without even realizing that we are. So the awareness piece comes in here big time.
Yeah.
Just getting, it's like when you buy a white car, all of a sudden all you see are white cars on the
that's
road, right? It's happened to me
that's
all
your
the time.
brain.
It's the same thing though. Once we are aware of something,
Hmm.
then we start to see it more.
Yes. Well,
And
and
that's when we can do something about it.
yes, and that's really a great piece to talk about because when we aren't aware of that, like I love using the example, and I always use a car example, and then I tap it over into work. We've all had that one boss that would call us into their office, and we'd be like, oh, what now? Right. And maybe we only had 2 negative interactions and they called us into their office 100 times. That is part of how our brain works. And if we're only focusing on that and we are judging it, we're going to look for things that make that judgment true. We aren't going to look for things that make it untrue.
Right. And we bring that energy in with us.
Yes, we
That's how
do.
we show up.
Yes, it's how it pulls us down into those lower levels.
Yep.
Hmm.
Yep. Oh, this is such powerful stuff. Oh,
Awareness is it's hard. I won't say that it's not, but it's so fulfilling once you get there.
and the more we are aware of our thoughts, how that uh, guides our behavior,
Yeah.
and that is how others we show up, how others see us. That the energy is it's just like this thread throughout all of that, and it pulls them all together until we choose to change it.
Yes.
And that can turn from a black thread to a platinum thread when we figure it out, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Third tip. What have you got?
My third tip is to really spend that 5 to 10 minutes a day focusing on how you want to be. We'll change those default tendencies when we do that. They've done a lot of studies. One of them was famous about basketball, where they took a group and they had them practice free throws for like an hour a day. And then they took another group and they had them visualize for 30 minutes a day, and they never touched a ball. And then they had the control group that didn't do either. The group that actually practiced the free throws every single day for 30 days got about 25% better, 26% better. The group that visualized it got 25% better without ever touching the ball. So oftentimes we feel like we have to practice by actually having conversations, but the more we think about them, and we don't judge ourselves in them, we don't look for the negatives. We're actually looking like, this is how I want to show up. This is the outcome I want to have. This is where I want to be. The more we do that and practice it, the more it just actually comes naturally, because we're creating that default tendency. That's how you create that new neural pathway. So I would invite you to do that for a month on a specific thing and see the change that you get.
Just thoughts become things, right?
They do.
Yep, they do. Yeah. This is powerful stuff, Desiree. And I am rather certain. I love the way you've woven this phrase throughout. Default tendencies, the things that we are, the things we do, the things we say unconsciously.
Mhm.
So when we become aware of those, there's magic in that. I love this conversation. And
Thank
I know there are going to be a lot of people who are going to want to know more from you. So, what is the one best way for them to get in touch with you?
So the one best way would probably go to my website. You can learn more about energy leadership there, and that is at desiredeffectscoaching.com.
Okay.
You can also reach me at LinkedIn under my name, Desiree Musselman, or under Desired Effects Coaching.
Okay. And all of those links will be in the show notes for everyone to get to your website, to download this free gift you have. All of those links will be in the show notes. Desiree, thank you so much for sharing your expertise on this, what I think is a really important topic.
Thanks for the great conversation. I really enjoyed it.
It is my pleasure, and I really want to thank you for being here. And
Thanks for
to
having me.
everyone else who has joined us, I want to tell you how much I appreciate your being a part of this community. And as I said, if you enjoyed this episode, check out the show notes below and subscribe so that you don't miss one. Leave us a comment. Tell us what you liked. Tell us what resonated with you. And if there's a star rating where you are, pick a star and let us know what you thought of the show. As I said, also, I love creating and sharing resources for women. Plus, as a career and life coach, I work with women to help them navigate challenging times more quickly and gracefully. So, if something in this episode resonates with you and you'd like a fresh perspective, reach out. Let's talk. You can reach Desiree, as I said in the links below. And I invite you to continue this conversation in my private Facebook group called the Career Transition Roadmap. And the link for that is below as well. So let's meet again here next Wednesday, as always, because you know what? I believe it's our time to thrive. So let's thrive together. Till next time, I'm Maria Tomás-Keegan, helping you turn transition into triumph.